In today's beginner-friendly tutorial, we are going to build a cool card swiper I found on the Webflow website. You will learn step-by-step how to recreate it using plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. By the end of the video, you will learn how to make a fully customizable card swiper without using a library, learn how to make smooth animation with JavaScript, and learn a bunch of useful productivity and CSS tips. You can follow along with the fully written code in the description if you don't want to write everything yourself. Let's get started. First, let's open a code editor like VS Code. Make 3 files: index.html, style.css, and script.js. In the HTML file, let's set up the basic structure. Type in an exclamation point and hit enter. This will generate a boilerplate for our project. And this shortcut is called snippet and is built in VS Code to help us write HTML code faster. Now we have the skeleton of our page. We need to link to CSS and JavaScript. So right here, type link :CSS, and then inside the body tag, type script :module, and for source, type script.js. Now, to follow this tutorial, we'll need an extension called LiveServer. If you haven't installed it, install it now. Basically, it's a localhost server for HTML and CSS file. Now, if you have installed it, you will see a Go Live button here. Click it. And now we have a basic structure for the project. Alright, let's start building the card swiper. First, let's break down the original design on Webflow. The first thing we notice here is there are 5 cards, and each of it has a different border color, and they're aligned horizontally. And the second thing is the background color is black, and the card swiper is centered vertically. And each card has some content in it, and when we hover, we'll see the card changes color. The last thing is there's no horizontal scroll bar, but we can drag the card swiper, and then when we release it, it will automatically move to a snap point. Now we are going to implement the features one by one. In the HTML file, we are going to create 5 cards and a container. So inside the body tag, type if.cardSwiper to create a container, and then type if.card times 5 to create 5 cards. Now, it would be nice if we can see the cards. So open style.css. Oops, I forgot to hit save. Open style.css and have a card. Let's give it a width of 25 rem and an aspect ratio of 6:7 and a tiny border radius of 0.25 rem. If we see the page now, you'll see nothing. This is because the cards have the same color as the body. So let's give each card a border and color. To do this, we'll need to use the nChild selector. This nChild selector is used to select a card by its position among the siblings. Here, we are basically selecting this card. It's based on the position in the HTML. So to set the second card, just do this. Let's get the first card at border. Save. Now we see the cards here. Now repeat this for all 5 cards. For each of the cards, we will set a different color. Next, let's align the cards horizontally. To do that, in the card swiper container, we'll set it to display flex. And then set a column gap of 2 rem. And then let's give it a margin inline of 3.5 rem. So if you don't know this property, it's basically a shortcut for margin right or left. So this is setting margin right and margin left to 3.5 rem. Notice here the card becomes smaller when we set a display flex. This is because by default, when flex item overflow the container, it will shrink, and we don't want that. So let's disable the behavior. Go to the card class and then set flat string to 0. Now move on to task 2. We are going to style the background, which is in this case the body tag, and center the card swiper. So here, make a body, and then let's set the background color to black. And since the background color is black, we want the default text color to be white. And then set the margin to 0. To center the container, we'll use display grid to set items to center. So display grid. And then we'll use the place item shorthand to center it. If you don't know this property, this is a shorthand for align items and justify items. It's used to center an element both horizontally and vertically. Now to save, as you can see, there's nothing changed. This is because if we inspect it, the body has the same height as the card swiper. So let's set the height to 100 pH. And now it's centered. But there's another problem. There's a scroll bar here, and we don't want that. So let's set the overflow to hidden. We will control the scroll behavior using JavaScript later. Lastly, let's set the font family to Arial. Move on to task 3. Let's go back to the HTML part. Now, inside every card div, we'll want to add some text content. So first is the logo. And then we want some stats. And inside it, we want number and text. Let's hard code the number for now. And last, we want a restory button. Now copy this part, this content, and then paste it to all the cards. Hold Shift or F to style it. This gives us the basic structure of the cards. Now let's style it. Let's go back to the CSS style. First, in the card class, let's set the display to flex, and then flex direction to column. Set the justify content to space between. And then give it a padding of 2 rem. Now, you can see that when we give it a padding, the cards actually become bigger, even though the width remains the same. This is because by default, the box model doesn't count the padding as width. So we want to change that because we want a constant width. So let's set the box sizing to border box. And now the width becomes the same even though we applied padding. Now we'll apply some styling to all these content in the cards. Now the cool part, the hover animation. Let's scroll down to the bottom of the CSS. When we hover on the card swiper, we want the background color to change. And then we also want the text color to change from white to black. So let's select the cards again using mchild. And then on hover, change the color. Now let's repeat it for all the other cards. Now they changes color. I just realized that the border of the second card is also orange, but I want it to blue. So move that back to here and change it from orange to blue. Alright, now the animation is instant, so to make it more smooth, we will need to add a transition property. So in the card class, type transition, all 0.7 seconds, and then ease out. Here we go, we have the animation. So here, let's explain the transition property a little bit if you don't know. So here all means that every property changes on cards will trigger this transition, and 0.7 means the length of the transition. And then last, the ease out is a timing function. It means that the animation will slow down when it almost ends. Alright, next we are going to implement the swipe animation. So first we want to change the cursor style when we drag the swipe bar. So first let's change deferred cursor to grab. Right. Now head to script.js. Here we are going to implement the event listeners. So first, let's declare two variables that we are going to use throughout the files. The first is card swipe bar. So select it using purely selecting. And then select the card swipe bar class. And then we'll also need to select the cards. Use array from to convert it to an array object. Now, when the now is down, we want to trigger an event listener. So let's add event listener to the card swipe bar. On the mouse down event, let's call the function drag start. And when the mouse leaves the card swipe bar or a mouse is released, we want to call another function. So let's add another event listener on mouse up and mouse leave. And then let's call the function breadend. Lastly, when we are dragging the card swipe bar, we want to call another event listener. So on the mouse event, we are going to call drag. Now we are going to implement all the functions. The first thing we going to do is when we click on the card swipe bar, we want to change the cursor style. So in the drag style function, let's change the cursor style to graphing. Now when we click on it, you'll see the cursor style change. And we want to change it back when we release the mouse. So here, change it back to grab. Next, let's set the corresponding state in each function. So let's declare a function variable called is dragging, and in drag start, set the is dragging the true. And then in on drag and set it to false. It's not dragging. We are not going to fire the effect. Now let's add a parameter to all our event listener. The event. And next is the most complicated part, which is the animation. So when the card swiper move, we want the card swiper to move with the cursor. So if the cursor moves 10 pixels, we want to translate the card swiper by 10 pixels. So first, let's declare some variables we are going to use. First is the current translate. Set the default value to 0. The current translate is used to store the position of the card swiper, and we'll need an animation ID. Also initial value 0, and we'll need a start position variable. To move the card swiper, we will use translate x. So let's declare a function called set transform, and then inside set transform we will update we will actually translate the card swiper. So style.transform, and then use a dynamic string, set translate x to current translate x. The current translate variable here is used to store the position of the card, and we'll update it. Now, to constantly update the animation, we will need to use the request animation frame, and then pass in set transform. What this will do is constantly run the set transform, because when we are dragging the card swiper, we will need to constantly update the position. Now we actually need to set a first trigger of the request animation function. So do that in the drag stop function. Let's call the request animation function at transport. And we don't want the animation to run forever. So when we release our mouse, we want to cancel the animation. To do that, we will need to first store the animation ID, and then drag and cancel the animation with the ID. We are going to actually update the card position with the current translate variable. We'll actually need to know the starting point of the mouse click and how far the cursor has traveled. So to do that, first in the drag start function, we'll store a start position, set it to e.climb x minus current translate. Here the e.climb x will tell us the x coordinate of the cursor in the browser viewports. And once we have the start position, when we drag the card swiper, we can update the card translate. Just find out that the translate we wrote the wrong thing. Let's add back a parenthesis here. Now we have a functional card swiper. Now there's a problem here. When we highlight the text and drag it, we'll see a weird behavior. And we don't want that. So in the drag stop function, we're going to call call prevent default. And now the problem is gone. Next, we're going to implement features that when we release the card, it will automatically snap to a snap point. So first in the drag end function, we will call a function called animate drag snap point. And we'll write the function down here. Alright, so the first thing is we need to calculate the snap points. Let's make a function called getSnapPoints. And then we implement the function down here. To calculate the snap points, we will need to know the width of the card and the column gap. So to get the card width, card 0 dot offset width, this will give us the width of the elements, excluding the margin, and then calculate the card gap using Windows.getComputed.style. Now this will return a string including the CSS unit like 20 pixels, and we want a number, so use parseInt. Now we can calculate the points. Going to use card.map, and then we'll donate the first argument. We'll only need the index. Calculate the snap point by multiplying index and card width plus card gap. Now, once we have the snap points, we can calculate the closest snap point when we release our mouse. So to calculate that, we'll use the reduce function. Then let's make a reducer function to calculate the closest snap point. The reducer function will iterate every point in the snap points array, checking one by one if the current point is closer than the point in the last iteration. I'll return the closest point as a number. Now let's update the current translate, closest, and set transform. Now the card swiper should automatically snap. but apparently it does not. If we check the console, we'll see that it misses a parenthesis. Now we added back the parenthesis, then it should work now. And yes, it does that. Now we have the snap animation. The snap animation is almost instantaneous now. And to make it more smooth, let's give it a transition. So track N, let's set the card swiper transition. Now it's more smooth. And we only want it to be effective during the snap animation, but not during the drags. So in restart, let's set the card swipe transition to none. Here we go. Now we're going to complete the card swipe.